Well, historically, boxing is littered with big fights that never quite got over the line. But coming up on Saturday, April the 22nd, at the famous Epsom Downs Racecourse in Surrey, it is arguably one of the biggest fights Quest Boxing League has ever staged. The British middleweight champion Cheznie Hawkins takes on the undefeated #1 challenger Cillian Mills in an absolutely epic clash. And I'm here with my colleague Dan Woodgate to talk about the impending battle. We're going to be talking about who wins this fight and why, and what happens when that first bell sounds. And Dan, great to have you here. Obviously, first time we've done this Road to Glory show where we preview such a massive fight. But first and foremost, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. And it's good to be here, obviously. Doing something like this is important for a fight of this calibre. This sort of fight deserves this sort of build-up, because both fighters are bringing so much to the table that to not give them the recognition in a build-up of this sort, it'd be criminal not to, I'd say, mate.
Absolutely. And it's a massive fight. I mean, if we look back, call it the tail of the tape, March 2022, Cheznie Hawkins stormed to victory, beating Ronnie Chisholm to capture the British title in an absolutely amazing performance. Let's sort of highlight that for people that didn't see that fight. You know, he came in there. Previously, he'd boxed Ronnie Chisholm. He'd lost in a fight where he said, I didn't really prepare properly and I wasn't really ready for that fight, but showed a totally different sort of class of fighter in the rematch with Chisholm, winning the title by stoppage. And now we fast forward to this fight against Cillian Mills, who up until this point hasn't put a foot wrong in the competition. He's undefeated, 4 fights, 4 wins. Last time out against Jake Dove-Lyons, an absolutely phenomenal performance to stop him at the end of the first round. And I think when you look at this, there are so many facets to this fight, so many questions that you could argue for Mills, for Hawkins, and how this fight plays out. So where do we start? Well, let's try and break it down. I'm going to throw it to you. So you're going to be Team Mills and I'm going to be Team Hawkins. Mills is the challenger, Hawkins is the champion. So try and break down. I know you've watched the fight back recently of Mills' national title win. So try and talk me through a little bit about how you see Cillian Mills as a fighter.
So Cillian Mills' last fight, I actually wasn't there commentating that night. I was away. So I missed that one, which obviously it's not ideal because I like to be there ringside. You get a completely different feel when you're there commentating on a fight. But I've watched it back and he put on a great performance against someone that I really rate, Dove-Lyons, who's a very good fighter. But that showed the quality and class of Cillian Mills, shows his ability. And in that fight, he done a great job of completely nullifying what Dove-Lyons does really well, which is come forward and he basically beats people up usually, Dove-Lyons, but Cillian Mills completely nullified that and gave him nothing. And what he was doing there, he's tall, he's got long arms, and he was utilising the tools that he's got as good as he could have done. And that is what he's got to do against Hawkins. That is the way that he beats Hawkins. He's got to make it hard for Hawkins to get his shots off, because we know that Hawkins hits hard, so does Cillian. But Cillian's the sort of fighter that if he gets it right and he boxes to his best ability, he's going to be very tough to beat.
Like I say, I mean, if you look at this physically on paper, you've got Mills, who's tall, rangy, like you say, long levers, picks his shots nicely, fast hands. And then if you look at the champion, I mean, I'm going to be sort of, for want of a better word, Team Hawkins. I'm going to talk you through why I sort of can see an argument for Cheznie Hawkins retaining his title. So, like I say, last time out, we saw the performance against Ronnie Chisholm, a different animal in there. You know, he was well prepared, he was hungry, and it was like literally chalk and cheese from his performance against Chisholm earlier on in his career. But personally, I don't believe that Mills has come up against anybody of Cheznie Hawkins' calibre, and I'll tell you why. So Hawkins had a good amateur pedigree. He boxed as a professional 3 times, undefeated. He came into the Quest competition off a long layoff and, as I say, didn't really do himself justice in the first fight, even though he thought that he still nicked the first fight. But I think when you're looking at levels, and people always talk about in boxing there's levels to this sport, you know, and you get a kind of a crossroads fight like this where you've got the up-and-coming sort of heir to the throne, if you want to call it. A lot of people are tipping Mills to win this fight because of the performances he's put on previously. You know, his debut against a tough and awkward individual, Gary Allen, you know, showed that he had grit and determination. He was then on the undercard of the night that Cheznie Hawkins won the title, beating Hayden Sharif. He then won the national title against Jack McLean and then defended it against Jake Dove-Lyons. So he's mixed with good operators, but I don't believe, and this is not doing a disservice to any of his previous opponents, I don't believe he's been in with anybody on the level of Cheznie Hawkins. Like you and I were watching Hawkins earlier on the pads, and you could see the power, you could see the sharpness, you could see the spite in his work. And I think, you know, when you take into consideration that amateur pedigree and his professional experience and the fact that he's coming into this fight off such an impressive performance against Ronnie Chisholm, I think this is definitely going to be the toughest fight that Cillian Mills has ever had. And I think equally it's a hard night for Cheznie Hawkins. But I think that the quality of Hawkins, even though he's not had as many fights in the competition, is going to be a deciding factor.
Yeah, you're right in what you're saying. It's a fact that Cheznie Hawkins has got a calibre that's unrivalled with anyone that Cillian Mills has been in with. However, we've got to look at the fact that Cillian Mills is a huge guy for the weight. He hits hard and he's really awkward as well. He moves well off his shots. He's not the most astute with his feet, but the way he moves is unorthodox. And a fighter like Hawkins would be used to, like you said, pro, amateurs. He's used to fighting certain types of fighters. Cillian Mills is different from what he's faced before. He may not be as good as some of the guys that he's faced before, but it may sound silly to say it, good and being better doesn't always win you the fight. Being awkward is sometimes enough. And he's going to pose questions to Hawkins that Hawkins has never had to answer before. So Hawkins is going to have to dig deep and find something that he's never had to find before against someone like Cillian Mills. So I agree. I think Hawkins has got a great pedigree, and I think he is a different level of fighter than what Cillian Mills has been in with. But then we look at it and we say the Ronnie Chisholm fight, the first fight. Now Hawkins disputes the decision of that, but he also says that he hadn't prepared properly. But what about this fight? Is he prepared properly for this fight? Is he able to show what he showed in the second Chisholm fight? And we go back to that fight. I remember commentating on the Chisholm fight, and I was very much on the side of Chisholm winning that fight because of the first fight that we'd seen and the fact that we'd seen Chisholm improve a lot as well. And I was not surprised or shocked, but Hawkins showed that on that night that he'd made the improvements.
Absolutely,
maybe not from a technical perspective, because he was already technically apt. He was already a good fighter. But from a psychological perspective, he made he come on leaps and bounds because he got in there and he was like bit between the teeth. I know what I've got to do against Chisholm. He's not fighting Chisholm. He may not know what he needs to do against Cillian Mills. So, as much as I agree with what you're saying, this is not a walkover for Hawkins. And
absolutely not. I mean, I think you know, you've been an amateur, you've been a professional yourself, so you'll know the game inside out. I mean, but let's look at tactics. So, from a physicality point of view, we've already touched on it. Cillian Mills, he's tall, he's rangy, you know, he's big at the weight, he's got the height, and he's got the reach advantage. So when you're tactically looking at this fight, and you're watching Cillian Mills, and you're watching Cheznie Hawkins, if you're trying to sort of come up with a strategy, obviously the difficulty for Cheznie Hawkins is he's got to get past that rapier-like jab that Hawkins has. I mean, we saw it in the Dove-Lyons fight where he was peppering Dove-Lyons. I mean, we didn't really get to see too much because it only lasted a round, but he was firing that jab out, 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s. You know, he was on the back foot, he was moving away with the shots, and you could see that it was very, very difficult. Dove-Lyons just wanted to do what Dove-Lyons normally does and just get a hold of people and then just throw bombs.
Yeah.
But he wasn't in that position to get anywhere near them. So do you think the key element of this fight is that Cheznie Hawkins needs to break that distance down and nullify those long levers, get inside, and then use his speed and his power, because we know he's got both?
Yeah, look, like you said, we've watched Cheznie Hawkins on the pads here earlier, and I stood there and I analysed the way he moved his feet, the way he threw his punches. You don't have to look at how he punches to know that he hits hard. The pads were making a noise that you don't really hear very often. He's got power, untapped power. And if he manages to get that power off on Cillian Mills, then Cillian Mills could have problems. But like I'm saying, you're mentioning the height, you're mentioning that jab. I don't think that's the deciding factor in this fight. I think it's the awkwardness and the unorthodox style of Mills that causes the problems for Hawkins. That's where I see this fight being won or lost. And I think that's something that Mills needs to capitalise on. The fact that he's not easy to read because he doesn't do exactly what a tall, rangy boxer should do. He's got a lovely jab, uses it well, he uses his height well. But what he does, he moves in ways that other fighters of his sort of stature don't move. So that's where Hawkins needs to be on top of this, because he's going to have a whole world of issues if he can't work out the movement of Cillian Mills. But the same goes. Look, I'm Team Mills. You're Team Hawkins.
Only for the sake of this.
We've got to appreciate the fact that Hawkins, like you said, he's got that pedigree. He hits very hard. For me personally, if I'm going to pick out all the good things about what Cillian Mills, it's that unorthodox approach that he takes to fights, the way he moves, and the fact that he's fit, he's strong, and he hits hard himself. And I just think that Hawkins may come up against it, like I say, maybe posed a few questions that he's never had to answer before.
You know, whatever the outcome, like I say, in boxing, we've seen it time and time again where you get to a stage where there's the champion, and whether it's a sort of different belts are on the line, a unification type scenario, we see it time and time again where for some reason these fights don't happen. But that is the beauty of Quest, you know. It's the fact that these fights are made. There's no ducking them. You know, the number one fights the number two, you know, and what a great fighting prospect, because you could sit here and we could argue it so many different ways that, you know, Hawkins is too experienced, he's got the pedigree, he's got the power, and you could say it's, you know, it's a no-brainer. Hawkins wins this fight, defends the title, and moves on to the next. Whereas then you could sort of look at it and go, well, actually, you know, stop for a second. You know, Mills is undefeated. He doesn't know how to lose. He's taller, he's rangier, he can bang, he's fit, he's strong. You know, you've got to look at those attributes. So we could argue for either Mills or Hawkins winning this fight. But the great thing is, especially for the fans, that they are going to see an absolutely incredible main event where the best is facing the so-called best, as in Cillian Mills believes he is the number one and he's just a matter of time. And credit to both of them, because like I say, fights get sort of fall apart all the time through sort of you know, promotional or broadcast or, you know, conflicts, whatever it is, where this is a fight where the fans are going to turn up and they are going to see the current British champion, Cheznie Hawkins, defend without question. No, there wasn't even a sort of a hesitation. He took this fight. He said, "I want to prove that I'm the best." And you're going to see the two best in the division go head to head in the main event, and you know that it's just going to be fireworks.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to say something now. I'm going to praise you, Al. You do such a fantastic job with these shows. I've commentated on 12 or 15 shows now, and I say to everyone that's willing to listen, Quest is the future of boxing. This is what boxing is supposed to be about, the best, fighting the best. You bring guys in that are not very experienced and you pit them against each other and they create unbelievable competitions, unbelievable fights. You bring guys that are up and coming and you pit them against each other and they create unbelievable fights. I've, like I say, 12 or 15 shows I've commentated on. I don't think I've ever seen a boring fight.
No.
For me, and it's saying a lot because one of the fights we had the other week was probably one of the best fights I've ever seen live, Chart versus O'Brien. Mm-hmm. This could top it all.
I think
this could genuinely be one of the best fights we've ever seen on Quest. And that is saying something. And I'm sitting here with the hairs standing up on the back of my neck. And I have to praise you. And anyone, like I say, anyone that is interested in boxing, and wants to come and experience what boxing should be, the Quest is the place to do that. We've got the best venues, we have the best lighting, we have the best music team, and we have the best camera team, and we sit around.
It's an experience,
best
isn't it?
Commentators, obviously. It's an experience, and once you've been to one, you become part of the family, and that is the whole thing. And that's something you pride yourself, and I pride myself on being part of it as well. Is we become part of a family, and I can honestly say, hand on heart, and it's not because I'm part of it. Genuinely, this is what boxing's all about. This fight could, like I say, be the best of the best, and if it is, and you're not there, you are going to miss out.
No, I appreciate it, and it is. It's about the boxing. You know, it's about competitive boxing, not just prospects facing journeymen, which unfortunately in all sort of combat sports you get. But at this level, this is genuinely the best British middleweight champion Cheznie Hawkins facing the undefeated challenger. Nobody's hiding from anybody. Everybody wants to know, and the buzz surrounding this fight, the amount of interest in this fight, people just going, I cannot wait for this fight. And I think, like you say, we've seen some epic clashes over the last sort of couple of seasons. We've seen, like you say, Chart versus O'Brien, Rahman versus Chisholm. There's been some really, really eagerly anticipated fights that didn't disappoint. But I think this one, Saturday, April the 22nd, Epsom Racecourse in Surrey, I think this is going to be fantastic. So we've given you our opinions. As I say, there's still a number of weeks to go until fight night. But like I say, it is the main event. The show is called Legacy, and whoever walks away as the winner on that night is going to cement their legacy as one of the best the competition has ever seen. So unfortunately, that's all we have got time for. But as I say, that is the main event. There are plenty of other incredible fights to look forward to on that bill, and we will be ringside at the Epsom Downs Racecourse in Surrey for another huge night of Quest Boxing League action.